It seems that standard-sized Primaris Marines have finally learned how to use flamers. Let the purging commence. Hello and welcome back to Warspets Tactics, the strategy-focused 40k channel, where today we're taking a look at a really interesting preview from a couple of days back that confirms a couple of things, including one of the new Initiate Primaris Marines, and also is quite interesting for the thought of Primaris Marines in general getting their hands on flamer-wielding squads of Bernie boys. So let's talk a little bit about the miniature, and then we'll go on to have a look at the rules for the Pyreblaster. So the Primaris Initiate with Pyreblaster is part of this new Black Templars release. From that Codex roadmap that they released, we know that they're officially coming in November, but we also know that there's going to be some kind of launch box coming before then, probably in a similar sort of style to this Beast Snagger one or the Sisters box that came before it. At this stage, I'd be quite surprised if this miniature isn't included in that launch box, along with a new version of that Emperor's Champion. If it's similar to the Orcs one, the launch box could well drop a fair bit before the Codex, maybe sometime in late September or early October time. It certainly means that the miniature itself could potentially be monopose. A fair few of the options from these initial sets do tend to be a bit simplistic. In any case, this guy seems to be, for the most part, a fairly standard Space Marine intercessor, but with a fair bit of iconography from the Black Templars layered on top, and of course a completely different gun. It does appear that both shoulder pads do have the sculpted iconography on, that isn't just painted. He's got the tabard or loincloth-like bits on the legs. There's Black Templar symbols on the gun and on the helmet, and his weapon is chained to his arm, much like similar Black Templar kits have been before. They said in the article that that could be a hint of things to come, so I'm sure we'll get guys with standard bolt rifles having this sort of thing as well. The gun itself is called a Pyreblaster, and basically seems to be a really big chunky flamer with an interesting inbuilt nozzle, and very much feels in line with the Primaris reimagining of the various different weapons that they get, bigger and chunkier, and perhaps just a little bit more futuristic looking. I think perhaps the most interesting thing is that he's the first standard-sized Primaris Marine that we've seen with a flamethrower, and certainly felt like it was a bit of a gap for the Primaris Marines, particularly compared with the standard Space Marines who've had flamers in tactical squads for ages. I know that we've already had a Primaris Flamer unit in the Flamestorm Aggressors, but it does feel a little bit weird that their most basic squads were locked out of them. At this point, I'd be surprised if this guy isn't some sort of squad upgrade for the new Initiates. I'm guessing we're not going to see an entire squad of Initiates with these, though I guess it's not impossible. I'm going to guess we'd have the option for a fair few bolter or chainsword armed ones, and then most likely some Primaris neophytes of one sort or another, as seemed to appear on the new Black Templars Codex cover. I think maybe the most interesting thing for other Space Marine chapters, though, is whether this release is followed by some sort of generic release maybe a year or so down the line, perhaps getting entire squads of these as another special weapon option squad, as I could really see them being quite popular over multiple chapters. They just basically seem the equivalent of flamer weapons to what Hellblasters are to plasma weapons, and while I know that Black Templars most certainly do love their flamethrowers, there's plenty of other chapters that will be itching to get their hands on these, of which the Salamanders are probably first and foremost. With their +1 to wound and various different stratagems, Flamestorm Aggressors are a really tempting pick in a Salamander's army, and it's hard to imagine how these wouldn't be similarly popular for the boys in green, maybe jumping out of an impulsor or something and roasting the enemy with their various different flamer synergies. +1 to wound would be looking very nice on its rules profile. I don't know if that's absolutely guaranteed at the moment, but it certainly seems odds on to me. Every chance they might turn up in a future Space Marine release wave. So moving on, we do also have the rules for the Pyreblaster. It has a 15-inch range, Assault D6, Strength 4, AP -1, Damage 1, and as you'd expect as flamer weapons, it does automatically hit the target. It's basically the equivalent of a standard flamer, but with 3-inch range and an extra pip of AP. I'm maybe not sure whether the 3-inch range is the biggest deal in the world. It certainly doesn't hurt on a short-range weapon, but it's not quite as big a deal as it might have been when flamers were 9 inches, where the difference would allow them to fry things out of Deep Strike or Strategic Reserve, for example. The extra AP -1 though does make it a far more generalist weapon compared with the standard flamer. Not all that many people tended to pick flamers or combi flamers in tactical squads these days. Maybe it's Salamander's Stern Guard or perhaps Death Watch with combi flamers, but in general Space Marines are just quite good at putting out a lot of strength 4 AP nothing firepower if they want to. Having the extra pip of AP will make it just a bit more generalist and at least do some damage to things like vehicles or Space Marines in power armor. Again, it does seem very similar to the bolter, plasma and melter upgrades that Primaris Marines got. Basically the bolter to the bolt rifle got extra range and AP, as did the plasma gun to the plasma incinerator, and the melter just doubled down on the range. If it is indeed a squad upgrade, I guess it's most likely to be a 5.1 perhaps. That would seem fairly reasonable to me for the extra utility that you're getting over a standard bolt rifle, and any more than that might just be a little bit questionable. Theoretically, the threat range is really quite good. You could advance and shoot this to full effect, so on average, even if your opponent is around 24 inches away from your Space Marine, with a move and advance, you should have a good chance of stacking a fair amount of strength 4 AP-1 hits on them. It'll be interesting to see if the new datasheets get the exact same options as the intercessors in terms of bolt rifles or chainswords. If they are just completely de-restricted, I could imagine it could pair well with the auto bolt rifle on other squad members. Then at least both of the weapons have some incentive to advance and shoot, so you can keep your squad moving forward at full tilt. I think this guy most certainly would like the Black Templars to keep their advance and charge stratagem in their new codex. It'd certainly be nice not to have to choose between shooting optimally or charging if you were using the stratagem on a big squad. Anyway, hopefully it's good enough to see some play. I do feel like flamer weapons often struggle for a niche, particularly as special weapons within squads. Often you just don't really want to have to mess with your movement too much to get them into range, when the rest of the squad might have preferred to hang back and fire bolt shots, or maybe focus on sitting back on an objective or something. So let me know what you think of the model and the new rules. I think he looks fairly cool to me, and it's going to be fun to see the entire Initiate squad when Games Workshop does eventually lift the lid and reveal them all. I'd also be interested to hear your thoughts as to whether or not Games Workshop are going to release these as a full unit or not. I know Space Marines certainly aren't the army that's in most need of releases, but I still can't help but think that they'd be very popular if you could pick up entire squads of flamer-armed Primaris to bless the heretics and Xenos with a touch of Promethium. I think flamer weapons are just one of those fun touches of 40k. It's a great fun to use in-game when they work well. In any case, if you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll most certainly keep up with Games Workshop's news and releases, and I'll most certainly be reviewing the Black Templar Codex in full when we do eventually have some details. Looking forward to seeing them crusading forward in their own codex once more. It has been a while since they've had a book all to themselves. Finally, if you'd like to help support the channel, I would just like to mention one way in which you can do so. If you live in the UK and were looking to pick up some models at some point, I would just like to mention that I have an Element Games affiliate link which is down in the video description below. Element Games is a discount retailer based in the UK. They usually give out 10 or 20% discount on Games Workshop's miniatures, and if you did decide to order anything in off them after clicking the link in the description, a small amount goes to help support Auspex Tactics without costing you any more when you buy. Can just be a way to help out if you were thinking about buying something anyway. Otherwise, for people in the USA and Canada, I do also have an Amazon link down there as well. That one works much the same. If you did click it before buying whatever you were going to buy anyway off Amazon, a small amount goes to help support the channel and doesn't cost you any more at all. A big thank you to you guys who have been using those links. In any case, an absolutely enormous thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.